this kind of feeling of, ooh, I hope the technology doesn't bomb. So yeah, so it's great. Thank you all very much for joining me today. We're going to talk about what has become a favorite of mine in Morocco, and we're going to talk about the tour. But first, let me tell you, for those of you who don't know me, I am Shila Desai. I am the owner and founder of E.Y.H.O Tours, which stands for Eat Your Heart Out Tours. And I've been promising a little snippet of how that silly name came about. But it was the first tour, and we had no idea that this would actually turn into a tour company. It was actually a culinary tour to India. And every time we posed for photographs, my friends and my group at the time, it turned out we were 8 people to start off. And we eventually were 19. So it just grew from just a group of friends into everybody inviting everybody else. And we were just traveling along, tasting the pleasures, the tastes of India, which was fascinating, staying in palaces, maharajas, and so on. And every time we were stopped for a photograph, they would say, "Eat your heart out," and so that's how the name came about. And every time I'm trying to change it, I've had people tell me, no, you can't change it, because that's how we remember. It's easy for us to remember. Anyhow, that's the name. It's stuck, although now the company has morphed to other things. It doesn't do just culinary tours. In fact, it's quite, it's a specialist in textile tours and material cultures. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I hope to transport you to Morocco. And, it's an odd time, because I feel that we are all so ready to travel, and yet we're 1 foot out the door and 1 foot still hanging on to safety and security until we know what's happening out in the world. But in the world of travel, when you start planning your tours, your traveling, I'm sure you plan about a year ahead. And for tour operators, we are planning a year definitely, and sometimes even 2 years ahead, because we have to make sure that everything is, all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed before we can take you. So we're putting these tours out. I'm putting these tours out. I'm putting in a lot of work on these tours, and I'm hoping that they run. But in the event that they don't, for whatever reason, because of the uncertainty, we are offering some very generous cancellation and rebooking provisions. So we'll get into that in a minute. But for today, I just want to get into an overview of this tour, just go through some housekeeping. This tour is, this talk, I keep talking about this tour. This talk is about 45 minutes long, and then there'll be questions at the end, and we hope to take some questions during the talk as well. And it is being recorded. I should let you know that it's being recorded. So if you want to preserve your privacy, then you can rename yourself, you can turn your video off. And for best viewing options, I have spotlighted myself, but you might want to put it on speaker view so that you can have the best viewing experience. We do welcome all your questions. You can use them using the chat function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And the tech person today is my partner in crime, unpaid partner in crime, should I say, because he's my husband. And he does this all for his love for me. So he is my partner, he's my tech partner, and he will take all your tech questions. So Shrikesh, if you want to just put your name in the chat, because it's a difficult name to spell, so that people know who to look for. In case you have any problems with your tech, please bug Shrikesh for that. And your mic is muted for now, but we will unmute it at the end. At the end, we will open it up. It'll be a forum, and we hope to take all your questions, and we'll also have a little shout out at the end. So I do like the meeting format as compared to the webinar format. So at least in meetings, I get to see all of you, and we can have a little bit of a, like a celebration at the end. All right, so let's just go right into it. So this evening, what are we going to talk about? So we're going to talk about Zellige, and I have to make a disclosure here that I'm not a ceramist, I'm not an expert. It's just that I fell in love with Zellige, which is the tile mosaic which you see all over Morocco. I fell in love with it over the several visits that I've had to Morocco, and I just kept. And then when I found out how it was made, it just made it even more fascinating for me that this very intricate form of tile mosaic could basically adorn entire walls and forts and palaces, and it was just mind blowing for me. So we're going to talk about Zellige, and I'll give you a tour preview of the tour that we hope to run in November this year. And then, of course, we will take your questions and comments. So that is, in a nutshell, is the format for today. And in case you're wondering about this photograph, this is the sort of thing that I mean when I say that Zellige is almost like, Morocco is like a jewel box that you walk through. It's a land of enchantment. And you will stay at a place like this. This is actually a Riyadh in Fez, which feels like you've entered a jewel box. It's so the experience is just so completely, takes you completely out of your everyday life, or out of your grays and blues, or rather the grays and browns, and then into this world of color and texture and pattern. It's just fascinating. So let's get on with it. Okay, so just before we do, a little bit about E.Y.H.O tours. We are small groups. We specialize in themed tours, as I said earlier, and themed as in material cultures. We specialize in textiles, art, history, architecture, arts and crafts, that kind of thing. And the reason for the theme tours is that with any destination, it always kind of deepens your experience if you can put a theme, or you can put a lens or a frame around a destination and then go deeper into it. So each tour has a theme. And the other thing is that we have intimate knowledge of our destination. We dry run our tours several times. We just really get to know our destination. We make lots of connections with the local partners and with the guides there. We never go on a tour just take you there and we've never been there. So every destination is extensively dry run. We have North American and UK based tour leaders, and they have a deep commitment. They're deeply entrenched in the culture of the destination. And at this time, particularly, it's important, I feel, that you do not get palmed off to a guide or a local partner, because their sense of risk and their sense of how the pandemic is playing out will be very different to our sense up here in North America or the UK, for that example. And so the UK tour leader will be with you all the time. In fact, for Morocco, I'm accompanying, so I will make sure that things are running according to North American standards. Excuse me. And the other thing is we welcome all our multiple repeat clients. We have clients from way back from the original tours who still travel with us, multiple clients, some who have traveled with us, on 10 tours, 11 tours. So it's always a wonderful accolade, and thank you so much for your vote of confidence. Lastly, we are TICO accredited, which means we are Travel Industry Council of Ontario accredited, which subjects us to stringent audits, trust accounting. Basically, it means that your money, we can't touch it. It goes into a trust account, and until the tour is complete, we are not allowed to touch it. So your money is safe. Besides that, it's a small, it's me and my husband and occasional help from my daughters, and I'll have people coming and help me. I collaborate, and so my overheads are pretty low. I mean, if you think this is my office, no, it's not. I work from home, and my overheads are very low, which means that, touch wood, fingers crossed, as a business, I am better placed to survive the pandemic as opposed to some of the bigger operations which have a lot of overheads. All right, so that's enough about E.Y.H.O tours. Let's get into Zellige, which is one of my favorite subjects. So So with Zellige, what is this fascination? And I'm going to speak from a very personal level. I think I was drawn to it the minute I arrived in Casablanca. And the minute I arrived, my eyes dart all over the place. It, it, my hands want to touch it. I want to feel it. I want to feel the coolness of the tile, because it's everywhere. You can't stop looking at it. It's almost hypnotic. Um, you see these geometric patterns that are repeated all over. It's mesmerizing, and you just want to feel the cool of the tiles, which in Morocco on a hot summer day feels so calming, you know. And so there's this visual treat. It's a treat for the senses, and so that for me is the fascination with Zellige. And of course, when you find out about how it's made, that just deepens your appreciation for everything that's Zellige. And here you can see this is something that was probably a vintage form of Zellige. You know, it's still very beautiful. It's very durable, and so you could have, you know, for example, the Sari Tombs. There are examples of Zellige all the way from the 14th century. They're still existing, so it's quite durable. There are a few things that can go wrong with Zellige, but overall, it's very durable. And you know, you could have it on the table that you're having your mint tea or your coffee on. You'll have it, you know, going up stairs. Every single place that they can put a little bit of Zellige, they will. And you know, lining the pool, for example, in this Riyadh. You know, we might just settle for ordinary vinyl, but you know, in Morocco they want Zellige. So it's you know, it's quite fascinating how the Moroccan mind goes into their design and design of symmetry and geometry. So a few more photographs. This is, like I said, the Sari Tombs. This is the background that I have right now. And it's very, this is the kind of architecture, traditional architecture that you'll find all over Morocco. Obviously, this is a royal tomb of the Saudi princes, but and it's not Saudi, it's Saadi, Saadi princes. But basically, the Zellige will be lining the walls and the floors wherever, you know, there's contact with hands or feet, because it's easy to clean, obviously. And then up here, you will have what is known as tadelact, which is plaster. And this is plaster that can be shaped into various patterns and forms, and fantastical, you know, it looks so beautiful, like, you know, like a wedding cake almost. And then you have it topped by a cedar roof. Again, that is beautifully carved and decorated, Quranic inscriptions. So that is a typical kind of Moroccan architecture in palaces and tombs. But having said that, you know, you can enjoy Zellige in your Riyadh. So Riyadh is a heritage mansion. These are these fabulous little, they may not be little, actually they could be little mazes, like almost like a catacomb of rooms, and in a heritage mansion. So you could be walking along the street, and it's quite nondescript. The street could be quite plain. There'll be a door with a knocker on it, and then you open it, and then it opens up into this enchanting place that looks like, again, like a little jewel box. So you know, will be staying in places like these Riyadhs. This is an example from the Hasantu Mosque in Casablanca. This is, you know, it's fairly recent, 1993, but they have used the traditional methods of Zellige. And then you could see, you know, you just see Morocco, the sense of design and geometry is so ingrained that even shoes are put up on a wall. I call this the wall of shoes in a modern mall. It's called the Moroccan Mall in Casablanca, that has that, you know, patterned in this way to resemble Zellige. So it's so delightful just to get into this part of, you know, Morocco. Right. So if you know me, you know that, you know, there is no talk without a little bit of a history lesson. So we'll go into the history of Zellige, which is actually tied into the history of ceramics. You can't talk about Zellige and not talk about the whole history of ceramics. So the earliest forms of ceramics that are still surviving that we have are, you know, the 4th century, from the 4th century BCE in the Holy Lands up here. But of course, it came much earlier. Porcelain tiling came much earlier from China, but some of the earliest forms that we have are from the 4th century BCE in the Holy Lands. And basically, what happened is from there, the Romans brought Zellige into Europe, including the occupied lands, which included Morocco. And this was ancient Mauritania, this part of Morocco at that time. That's where you will find the Zellige that, not Zellige, sorry, you find mosaics there, the fabulous mosaics that are on the floors of the ancient Roman mansions. There must have been mansions at a time. Right now it's an archaeological site, it's ruins, but they were beautiful pieces, like they're cut marble tiles, mica, and they're just phenomenal mosaics there. So the Romans brought that in here at this part of Mauritania, it was known at that time. And then from there, it died off until it was rediscovered in Spain in the 12th century. So, and then from there, from Spain and Portugal, it went to the New World. It's a form of talavera. For those of you who've gone to Mexico or traveled with us to Mexico, you remember, we went to Puebla, and the talavera tiles, they're a form of what they call azulejo tiles. This is painted ceramics. It's not mosaics as much as, say, Zellige is. But then what happened was, we shift the action back again to China. In the northwest of China, we have the Uyghur people who are in the news quite a bit these days, and they were Islamic. So in the 8th century, they developed the mosaics, the botanical and geometric forms of mosaics of tiles, and this formed the basis for the 13th century Turkish and Middle Eastern tiles, which developed around this area. Right here. And in Morocco, certainly Zellige had a resurgence in the 10th century, because they were trying to recreate the Greco-Roman mosaics, such as in Volubilus, where we will go. It's a UNESCO site. So Zellige is actually based, the precursor could be said that in Morocco anyway, it came from the Greco-Roman mosaics. But here's the thing, Zellige is different to other forms of mosaic because it's pieces of cut earthenware tile as opposed to cut pieces of marble or mica. And the other thing that blows me away is that it's assembled upside down, whereas mosaics are, you can see what you're doing. With Zellige, it's assembled upside down. So it's very difficult. You don't have the color gradations to see what you're doing. You just have the shapes. And so this makes it very difficult. And then you don't know what it looks like until they put some more cement on it, and then suddenly they flip it, and then you can see. So there's no room for error, and there's no taking it off. Once you put the cement on it, that's it. So they have to be very, very skilled. The other thing about Zellige is obviously it's because it's an Islamic art form. It's geometric because there's no figures allowed in Islam. And as I said, it's different from azulejo, although the Arabic Zellige is what gives the name azulejo. That's where it comes from. And because azulejo is painted, and so is majolica. It's the same form. Azulejo or majolica are the same. They're painted tiles, right? So that, in a nutshell, is the history of ceramics, and that's where Zellige fits in to the history of ceramics. So the earliest forms of Zellige were brown and white. This was during the time of before the Moorish invasion of present-day Spain, and this was when the Al-Andalus was under the Moorish control. And this was during the 14th centuries when the highest level of perfection and sophistication was reached. At that time, Zellige was used for almost all types of architecture. You talk about palaces and fountains and baths, to patios, to tombs, everything. And the Alhambra, when it was built in the 13th century, was almost the epitome of Zellige. You see this beautiful, beautiful Zellige in Alhambra. Then when, of course, when the Moors were displaced from Spain, they retreated back to North Africa, and they came back to Morocco, and that's when they brought back the color glazing. These are all the colors that you find in Zellige. Initially, red was the last color to be added, but certainly they were using greens and blues. They were the first ones. And here you can see, this is the earliest example of Zellige in the city of Shala, the ruins of Shala, just outside of Rabat. This is an ancient city. So that's where this is one of the earliest forms of Zellige, still lasting all the way from the 14th century. You can imagine how durable it is. Right, so what are the concepts behind Zellige? For that, I'm going to take you to the Hasantu Mosque in Casablanca, and oops, I made a mistake here. It's not Rabat, it's actually Casablanca. So this is the mosque that was built in 1993 by the present king, Hassan II, and it's called the Hasantu Mosque. It's one of the largest mosques in Africa. I'd say probably one of the largest mosques. And they've used the traditional techniques of making Zellige, but they've also applied modern, mathematics of the math of art, which is actually a subject now, the math of art. Fascinating. And they've used computer engineering, software engineering, all kinds of modeling on the computer to actually apply these technological tools to the art of Zellige, and it's spectacular. So these are the concepts of Zellige. As you can see here, it should be cool to touch. I mean, that's the whole point. This is a hot country, and the Zellige evokes a coolness. It evokes the scenes of water. It reflects the aquas of water, and the green is particularly in Zellige. It denotes water, and blue denotes the concept of Jannah, or infinity. It's basically the sky. And in Islam, the sky is where the Jannah is, where paradise is. The patterns also reflect the symbols of Jannah or paradise. So they're geometric, but they're actually floral, as you can see, most of them. Some of them also will imitate almost like a tree of life, but not quite. They'll push this as much as they can, but not quite. And with Zellige, it was mostly obviously it was the royals who could afford it, and so then of course the common person also wanted it, and so then you'll often find a little strip of Zellige in homes all over Morocco, which could be very prized. But it was mostly the royal palaces and the tombs and the fountains and patios and the bathhouses, hammams that were lined in Zellige. So that's where Zellige, that's where the main concepts of Zellige are. Let's take a look at the different forms of these styles. So these styles come in all kinds of shapes. These are just a few of the tiles the shapes that you could see. And the colors, there's many different colors, but traditionally these were the colors that were used. And if you imagine that you are pairing off, all these different patterns and colors, you can imagine the number of patterns you can make. It's almost, there's no end to it. And you could multiply the compositions into infinity. So they do say that an encyclopedia could not contain the full array of complex and often individually varied patterns, the individually shaped hand-cut tesserae or firma, as it's known in Arabic, that is found in Zellige work. Some could be star-based, there's honeycomb, and by the mix of colors, the size of the firma, the complexity and size of the interspacing, and then you have all the non-star or the non-geometric patterns. So you could have some of the curvilinear patterns here. You see some of that going on here. So it's just not always geometric, but you could have all kinds of combinations. And here you can see that these are these are tile that has been cut, that have been fired and cut, and they're in the process of being finessed. But this has attracted a lot of research in the mathematics of art. As I was saying, it's actually like a whole field of study now. And as we saw at the Hasantu Mosque, they have used the fields of mathematics, art, and history, computer science, computer modeling, software engineering, to actually bring this whole, the art of Zellige together. So Zellige itself is considered an art form. It's generational, which means that it's passed on from father to son. And we'll often see, if in Morocco, you'll see these workshops. These could be, they may not be, they're Zellige artisans, yes, for sure, but they may not be master artisans who are called malen in Arabic. So these master artisans pass on the tricks of how to cut Zellige, the colors, and how the tesserae is formed from father to son to apprentice. And they, it's a long training period. Could start as early as, or it did rather, it started as early as age 5, which has now stopped in Morocco since Morocco joined the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1993. And now you do not find children working in Zellige, but certainly before 1993, you might have seen children apprenticing in Zellige. Now what Morocco has done is they've the government has set up 58 artisan schools all over Morocco, but it is dying off. This is an art that is dying. The traditional form of making it is no longer there. There are a lot of Zellige workshops that are set up for commercial purposes, supplying tiles to all over the world, but they're done on computer modeling, and they're mechanized and so on. So the traditional way of making Zellige is dying off. As you can see, in Fes, there is the Zellige school has 400 enrolled, out of which an average of only 7 will graduate and go on to become Zellige masters. So it is dying off. So I could now go into graphics of how it's made and all that, but it's easiest if you can see it. So I'm going to see if I can show you a video. Okay, so just please bear with me while I do this. Let's see now. I need to put this video on. Okay, you can probably hear it. Right. So if that didn't take you away to Morocco, I don't know what will. So that is the very intricate process of how Zellige is made. And we'll get back to our, without the music, we'll get back to Morocco. Let me just see now. All right. So that's how Zellige is made. And, when you think about how complex it is, how complex the entire process is, you can appreciate how much human labor has gone into it. I think that's what gets me every time as I'm walking through the streets in Morocco, or walking through a palace or a tomb in Morocco. I feel that I just feel this sense of how much human labor has been lavished, how much passion, and how sublime the level of artisanship is out there in Morocco. So that is Zellige. If you have any questions for me, I will try and answer them on Zellige. You can put them in the chat. But now let's go on and we can talk about a little bit about the tour. So first of all, this is the routing. This is the route that we will take. And Morocco is tucked away in the corner of Northwest Africa, all the way up there. Looking out, it's got a little bit of the Mediterranean Sea, and it's got the Atlantic Sea as well, or the Atlantic Ocean rather. And it has a variety of topography, of climatic zones. And we are going to see pretty much all of them through this tour. So if we are starting in Casablanca, which is really the easiest place to get into, and out of it has the best flight connections. And so we'll be spending a night in Casablanca. Then we kind of follow a clockwise route around to end in Marrakesh. So first we start in Casablanca, we go past Rabat, and we go to Chefchaouen, which is this fantastical blue town that is a photographer's delight. We'll talk more about that. We'll come down into Fes, and from Fes we go to Meknes. Meknes, it's a royal city as well. We're going to go and see Volubilus, as I mentioned, the mosaics which were the precursor to the Zellige. And from Meknes then, and Fez, we come down, we cross the Rif Mountains, which are part of the Atlas Range. And this is what I mean, that we'll be seeing a lot of different, climatic zones, topography. We'll be going through, we'll be climbing into the mountains and then out into the desert. And we're right into the Sahara, Midelt, and then Erfoud, Merzouga. You are in the heart of the Sahara Desert here. We'll be spending 3 nights between Erfoud, Merzouga, and Ouarzazate. And then we come out into Marrakesh. Again, we go over the mountains and come out into Marrakesh. So from Marrakesh, then you have a chance to decide what you want to do. You may want to just, take it easy and go to the coastal town of Essaouira, which is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's got a lovely laid back vibe. I love Essaouira. It's one of my favorite places. Or if you're the active sort and you want to get back into the Atlas Mountains and trek, that's always an option. So from Marrakesh, you would be based a little bit away from Marrakesh, and then you have the option to go trek in the Atlas Mountains. So that's Marrakesh. And if you are not doing any one of those 2 options, then we transfer you back to Casablanca and home. So that, in a nutshell, is our tour. We have 1 night in Casablanca. We have 2 nights in Chefchaouen. We have 3 whole nights in Fez, which is my favorite. I'll tell you why in a minute. And from Fez, we have 3 nights, as I said, between Erfoud, Merzouga, and Ouarzazate. And then Marrakesh is going to be 3 whole days of pampering and just, because Marrakesh is endless. It's got endless distractions, endless pleasures. It's this fabulous, very, very decadent place. So Marrakesh, and then, you've got back again to Casablanca. So that, in a nutshell, is our tour for 2021. I'll start by giving you a little bit about each one of these places that we'll stop at and what we're going to do there. So let's get into Casablanca. So Casablanca often gets a little bit of a short shift because it's the place that the tourists land and they want to get off into either Fez or Marrakesh, or get into the desert, get on a camel and get into the desert. And people don't spend enough time in Casablanca, but I think there's so many wonderful things about Casablanca. They definitely go and see the Hasantu Mosque, which is what you see here. But there's also parts of Casablanca that are delightful. And I like it because it is it doesn't have that tourist vibe, that sometimes the rest of Morocco can have if you don't know how to go a little bit under the surface. So Casablanca to me is the ideal kind of place to start in Morocco, where you get your feet wet, you go and see the beautiful Hasantu Mosque. As I said, it's state-of-the-art technology applied to a very old art form. And here I wanted to talk about this, particularly the bathrooms where the devout have to come and cleanse themselves before they can go into prayer, into the prayer halls. It's done in a traditional manner, but the water that comes out is temperature controlled, it's sanitized, it's clean. Like, it's just everything about this place is it's a marvel of technology applied to the old ways of building. So in fact, Hasantu Mosque is what I think the king Hassan II envisions for Morocco. He says that it is a blend of the traditional with the historic. The blend of traditional and historic with modern day. So Morocco is definitely going ahead, but it's not forgetting its traditions and its Islamic roots. So that is what that is the kind of branding that Hassan II, the king, has given to Morocco. So that is one of the things that you would see in Casablanca for sure. But there's parts of Casablanca that are not so discovered and not so visited. As I said, people just land in Casablanca and want to get off as soon as possible. But I love going to this jewel box of a museum. It's called the Musée Abderrahmane Slaoui. It's a private collection from the early 20th century. This was a businessman. Slaoui was a businessman, and he's got this fabulous collection of art and antiques and textiles and vintage posters. You could easily spend half a day in here, but obviously, there's always the rest of Morocco that's waiting. And the other place is Temple Beth El, which for Jewish people is a must, because that is one of the oldest. It's one of the main. I wouldn't say it's the oldest, but it's one of the centers of the Jewish settlements in Morocco. Certainly the hub, and it's got beautiful stained glass, surrounds and the windows and so on. So Temple Bethel, and then the Katia Habous it's the new Medina. So it's not the old Medina. This was built by the French in the 1920s when the old Medina began getting too overcrowded. So the French, it's got this lovely flair of French and Arab and everything that's Morocco. So I love just wandering in the Katia Bous. If I arrive in Casablanca a couple of days before the tour, it's never a hardship because you've got all these wonderful pleasures, and we'll try and fit these in depending on what time people are arriving into Casablanca on our tour. Then from Casablanca, we're going to head off along the coast to Chefchaouen. So Chefchaouen is, as you can see, it's one of these places where you are not going to want to put your camera away. It's stunning, stunning, stunning. Setting in the Rif Mountains. It was originally built as a fortress in the 15th century. And the mountains towering over Chef, as they call it, as it's affectionately known, resemble a pair of goat's horns. And then the creamy goat cheese that is popular around here is very much a specialty of Chefchaouen. And the architecture is the Jewish-inspired blue-tinted buildings. There's some Spanish ruins. There's an octagonal mosque. We will go and see we'll hike up to the waterfalls, and you'll still be, you'll be kind of getting over your jet lag here. So we're kind of easing you in gently. You can go and wander into all the different little alleyways of Chef, which, is just a visual delight. It's a treat to be in Chef Shawan. From Chef, we are moving on. We will go to Volubilus, as I mentioned. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The mosaics here are particularly of note. It was the Roman province of Mauritania. It was the 3rd century BCE. It was abandoned in the 11th century, and nobody knows really why. The mosaics are best preserved archaeological site in Morocco. We'll be visiting that with a specialist guide, excuse me. And we will then go into Meknes for lunch, but certainly to go and see this very fascinating part of Meknes, which I love. It's the horse stables and the storage, inside the old city, which was the 11th century, was an imperial city, Meknes. It's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I love this these stables. The horses were so cherished that they had to have palaces for their horses, as well as for their kings and queens. So that is Meknes and Volubilus. Now, around this time, we're also going to have one of our very special workshops. And this is the thing that I love about Morocco. This is, ever since 2011, when Morocco instituted a new constitution, it's given equal rights to women. So before 2011, women were very much they lived in harem, they were in parda, and they could not own land or own their own business. So if they did have anything to bring, the many, many talents, their textiles and the arts and crafts and their embroidery and all of those talents, they had to go through a male middle person, male counterpart who would, they couldn't speak for themselves basically. But since 2011, since the new constitution has been instituted, that has given women new rights. And now you're seeing this blossoming, this mushrooming of women-run cooperatives, and really, it's one way to connect with the women. You may not make a cherry button, and I'll get into what exactly a cherry button is. It's nothing that you can eat, unfortunately, but you'll have a fun time with getting to know these very warm, very personable women, very, very talented and very resourceful women. It's one way to sit with them, and while your hands are busy, your mouths can be busy as well, talking to them, getting to know them, breaking the ice. And so this is why I insist that we always have at least 2 or 3 workshops. And for the people who are not so interested in making things or making cherry buttons, you can always we'll always find something else for you to do back in Fes, or in there's tons of different options. So you don't have to come, but I suggest very highly that this is something that you will, you should, and you will enjoy it. Oh, by the way, a cherry button is what you see in the front of this jalaba that Afra is wearing. So the jalaba itself is pretty plain, as you can see, but Afra herself is not wearing something that's very colorful, but you can have these buttons that run down. They're handmade, and they're almost like hand crocheted buttons, and they give status, and they make each jalaba unique. So they make, according to your interest, you could have different colored buttons, you could have all kinds of multicolored buttons, you could have like even like a whole mix and match of buttons. And now they've started making cherry button jewelry. So this is something that's coming up. You can have earrings and necklaces and so on. And this is where we went into there, and we had lunch with this lovely family. So that's where we do the cherry button workshop for all of you crafters and textile people who are coming on this tour. And then from there, we head into what is possibly my favorite royal city, is Fes. And we have 3 nights in this oldest imperial city. It was founded in the 7th century, and it's the cultural heart of Morocco. So it is the cultural capital because this is Fas is where you have the Moroccan authors, you have universities, you have you know it's basically the heart and soul of cultural Morocco. And I find it the most authentic of all the Moroccan cities because its purpose or its raison d'etre is not tourism, or it's not so focused on tourism, although the tourists obviously are there, but the daily life continues in Fez. So you could people watch endlessly in Fez. You could grab a coffee, grab a table, and just while your day away, just watching everyday living in Fez. The Medina is fascinating. It's like a catacomb of 400 streets that you have to be careful. You could easily get lost in this Medina. And we always insist on staying inside the Medina. So you always have access to this very fascinating place. It's very vibrant. It's got lots of the Maronite architecture, the madrasas, such as the 14th century Bu Inania, with its elaborate cedar carvings, as you can see here, and very ornate tile work with the tadalakt. So it's 3 days will go very quickly, and you will feel like you want to come back to Fez at some point. I certainly always feel like that whenever I go to Fez. So that is Fez. We also have in Fez, in the evening, we have a lecture with a professor of gender studies, because I feel that the whole, what is happening in Morocco is so interesting in how it's rooted in tradition, and yet it's moving forward with emancipating women and women's rights. So we're going to have a lecture with my friend, Professor, who is a professor of gender studies from the university in Meknes, and she will tell us all about how this movement has happened and how it's blossoming all over the country. So from Fez, I've got some more photos of Fez. I can't get enough of Fez. When you go into the Medina, you will see, obviously you cannot go to Morocco and not admire the Berber rugs. The rugs there have two kinds of sources, actually. They come from the Berber people, and they also have the Arab influence as well. So they have, you'll see both kinds. Lots of weaving going on, sabra weaving, obviously you'll see the carpet weaving going on as well. And Fez is our place where you'll see the leather tanning, you'll see pottery, you'll see all kinds of workshops as we go through the Medina. It's a question of what you're interested in, and you can stop and pop into a workshop, that sort of thing. This, again, as I said, is our favorite Riyadh in Fez. We love this place. They're so welcoming. A Riyadh typically only has a certain number of rooms. This one only has, I think, 10 or 12 rooms. So it's very intimate, and we are looked after. We're pampered every time we go to Fez. And then when you step out, these are little alleyways. As I was saying, it could be a nondescript looking alley. I mean, this is not. This is a lot of personality, but it could be something that's very, like, oh, and then you open the door and there you are in this kind of jewel box land of enchantment. So that is Fez. From Fez, we are then heading off over the Rift Mountains and into the desert. So into the desert we go. We're going to pass the forests. You're also going to see some peaks, and it'll get quite cold momentarily. So you might even see some snow, and then we're into the desert. So we're into you will pass some pretty spectacular rock formations, the wadis, and we'll see some Amazigh villages. By the way, it's not Berber anymore. It's the politically correct term is Amazigh, although Berber is sometimes used interchangeable. And we'll stop for lunch, and then we're into a place called Erfoud. So in Erfoud, we are going to stay in a kasbah. Kasbah is a fortification. It was like basically a fort for the local leaders, because this area was very rich in trade. And, they had to fortify themselves, the goods that were passing through, and so the caravans that were passing through. So these kasbahs are very fantastical things. We'll look at those in a minute. And so we'll stay in a kasbah in this area. We'll also visit with Karen, a close friend now, and she has started Cafe Tisardamin, which is an artist's retreat right in the middle of the desert. She has lived with the Berber people, the Amazigh people, for decades, and really got to know their culture, and is bringing their incredible carpet weaving and embroidery skills. And just basically, it's an artist retreat, so you can apply if you feel that you've fallen in love with the Sahara. You can actually apply to go and stay there for a longer period. So this is where we'll go in, and we'll have lunch here, and just kind of get the vibe of the desert, which is so different, to being in a busy, bustling imperial city like Fez or Marrakesh. So a photograph of the Berber women weaving. They weave in these tents that are pitched on the desert sands, and the wind could be blowing that day, and they're remarkable. They're handling camel wool, which is quite tough, and bringing out beautiful, beautiful pieces, rugs, and as you saw, quite intricate patterns and all that. We'll also have a workshop here. It's an embroidery workshop of the Berber embroidery. Again, you're welcome to take a walk around Cafe Tisardamin, and if you don't want to necessarily do embroidery, there's always options. So after our little stint at Tisardamin, we are going to mount our camels and go off into the desert, right off into the sunset. So if you're not comfortable going on a camel, don't worry, we've got you covered. We'll transfer you by our 4x4s. But I recommend the camels very highly, particularly the kind of the dialogue that goes on between the camel and the camel handlers is quite delightful. The camels know what they're getting in for, and they don't want to do it sometimes, and the handlers are going to have to coax them to do something. It's quite it's a lovely give and take. So this whole area, by the way, is called the route of the 1,000 kasbahs. As I said, a kasbah is a desert fortification. And right in the middle of this desert, we stay at Jame Madu, which is a luxury camp. I should call it a glam. Really, I mean, you are not slumming it. As you can see, meals under the stars, candlelit dinners, and just pretty much every luxury. I think, well, yeah, the bathrooms have Zellige and chandeliers in these tents. Okay, so you're like, it's a delightful place. Love, love, love Jame Madu. This photograph here is one of the SARS, KSARS. It's Ait Ben Hadu, which is a UNESCO site again. And a SAR basically means it's a collective group of dwellings within fortified walls. And this one, they say that it's about the 17th century, but it's actually much earlier. It was on the trade route from Sudan to Marrakesh. And this is also where over 20 big blockbuster movies have been made. So if you're thinking Lawrence of Arabia, Game of Thrones, Jewel of the Nile, all of them were made here, Gladiator. And, it's a fascinating place. We climb all the way up the Kasbah through all these winding streets. There's all kinds of little bazaars in here. And then we're also maybe thinking of staying in here, but that's not confirmed. But it's totally magical. And we are going to see lots more of these SARs and Kasbahs around as we move along this area. So after the Kasbahs, this part of the desert, we are going to go into Marrakesh. So we're going to climb back out of the desert over the Atlas Mountains and into Marrakesh. Now Marrakesh almost feels like the holy grail. When you come into Marrakesh, it's like, oh my goodness, you don't know where to look. You don't know the obviously the Measural Gardens are a big draw, the Jamal Fana, the square. But Marrakesh itself is relatively one of the recent imperial cities. It was founded in recent, 1070 was founded, but then it kind of lost its place to Fez as the royal city. And only in the 16th century did it start finding its place again. And again, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Jamal Fana is the square that is in the center of Marrakesh. It's the busiest square in Africa. So you can imagine what that translates to. It's got 8 souks. Shopping is kind of, endless shopping if you want to do shopping there. The hammams, the stays in the Riyadh. Marrakesh is a place where you pamper yourself. You go to Marrakesh and you just say, you know what, I'm going to forget about watching how many calories I'm putting on, or, this is a place that you go to and you eat and you just basically enjoy life. It is one of these magical things. It is also very touristy. So I have to tell you that Marrakesh is going to feel like one of the most touristed places in Morocco. And with good reason. I mean, it's got the Measural Gardens. This is what you see here. In the early 1900s by Jacques Measural. He was an artist. He was a French artist, and he's the one who gave his name to Measural blue, which is now a patented color. Basically, that is the cobalt that you see here. It's very striking cobalt. It makes you almost feel like you're walking in a painting. The impression of actually being in some kind of a painting. And the house that he built here is a Cubist style house, and the gardens kind of fell into disrepair and for a long time, until the Yves Saint Laurent team, the couple, came into Marrakesh and they bought it and they restored the gardens and began living here. They also started the Beber Museum and the YSL Museum. So these two museums, the Beber Museum is the museum for Amazigh jewelry, Beber jewelry, fabulous jewelry. I have not seen, I mean, that alone could be half a day that you could spend in there. And then on top of that, there is the YSL Museum of all the design collections, or not all of them, or at least some of them, design collections that YSL has put up. So definitely a lot of, very chic, very French and Arabic and Amazigh. Like, this is basically what Morocco is. This is the coming together of the cultures, the 3 cultures of Morocco you will see in Marrakesh. Okay, so how do you get away from all the tourist stuff in Marrakesh? Well, as always, we look for a workshop. How do we get to know the people and connect with the women? And so we are going to have a Farsi embroidery workshop. Farsi embroidery is kind of a cross stitch. I'm not an embroiderer, so don't kind of hold me to this. But basically, it looks the same on both sides. It's quite a complex form of embroidery. You'll see this in some of the better made garments in Morocco. And we go and do this workshop with disabled women's co-op. So these were women who are victims. I mean, they could be amputees as well, but they're originally started off as victims of thalidomide, and they're severely disabled, and yet they are running this cooperative. Fabulous. The head woman actually has only just one arm and no legs, and she's sitting, she actually holds her embroidery kind of thing against her elbow, and she's embroidering. So it's fabulous just to see what they can accomplish, and their zest for life, their positive outlook is something that is complete celebration, just to even witness this. We can also go into a Tadelact plaster workshop. Tadelact is, as you recall, you can see this at the back, in my backdrop, in the Sari Tombs. This is the plaster work that Morocco is also famous for. We can go into the Jewish quartier. This is there's lots of little craft stores. You can get lost in there for easily for half a day. And there's the Museum of Water Civilization, which is fascinating museum of how water has been managed in this very dry region for since antiquity. You can have, for the foodies, you can have as many culinary workshops as time permits. And of course, the hammams in Marrakesh are just they'll take you to another level of pampering. So that for me is the hidden Marrakesh. We just kind of go off the tourist track, away from the Jamal Fana or the Measural Gardens, and we go into, the pleasures, the hidden pleasures of Marrakesh. So that will bring us to the fork in the tour, where you could either go to Essaouira, or you can go to Atlas Mountains for trekking, or you can go back to Casablanca. So in Essaouira is on the coastal, as I showed you on the map, it's kind of on the Atlantic Ocean. And Essaouira actually also is a UNESCO site. It was once a Portuguese fortress. You can actually see the cannons still pointed out to sea. The Portuguese used this as to protect this very strategic entry from all over into where Portugal is or was at that time. And but it's got this wonderful laid back vibe. I love Essaouira to end a tour in Morocco, because again, it's got this whole thing going on, the Portuguese influence there, but it's coastal and it's laid back. The Medina is definitely more navigable. You don't need a guide in Essaouira. You can just go exploring on your own, pop into a hammam, stop at a cafe and get your cup of mint tea, or just people watch. It's a great place to end in if you want. So we offer 3 nights or 4 days in Essaouira. And the sunsets are spectacular, as you can see from this photograph. This is the ocean there, and these camels just very conveniently came by at this time that I was standing there watching the sun. So the sunsets are spectacular. Or if you're the more active type, then you can go into the Atlas Mountains trekking. And there's all kinds of treks that can be geared towards you depending on your ability and your interest. You would definitely go to the base of Mount Toubkal, which is the highest peak in North Africa at over 4,000 meters. If you wanted to climb that, yes, we can arrange that, but you would definitely trek around there. And this would be a couple of nights from Marrakesh, about 3 nights, 3 days. You can have it longer if you want. It really depends on your interest and your ability. So let's talk about accommodations. With the way things are with the pandemic and with COVID, I just thought that the accommodations that we've had so far on other tours to Morocco have been fabulous, and we've never had a complaint. But I thought, this time let's just go a little bit more. Let's do a little more. And so we're staying in Relais Chateau in Casablanca, and we're staying in a restored palace in Marrakesh. As I showed you, the Riyadh, we've got the luxury Jamais Madou. All of these places have got COVID protocol for cleanliness and sanitary precautions. And it's just taking the pampering up to another level. For those of you who travel with me, know that the tours are all about rough edges, yes. We do push your comfort level a little bit, but we always have soft landings. So I insist on some very, very special accommodations. Nothing big box. We will not go to big box, but we've searched out these beautiful little jewel box of Riyadhs. I keep on saying jewel box because that's what it is. That's what Morocco is all about. So these are some of the accommodations. We're still working on them. Believe it or not, even in late October into November, which is supposed to be a little bit of a shorter season, things are getting booked up. I'm hearing, oh, this is booked. We've definitely got these ones that you see here, but a couple of them are booked already. So I'm just Wow, and it might have something to do with the fact that Morocco has actually managed its COVID numbers quite well. It had one of the lowest rates, and also its vaccination is quite aggressively being rolled out. So barring a really bad third wave, I can tell you that Morocco would be one of the better placed places to go to at the end of the year. All right, so this is a recap. It's 13 days in Morocco, starting October 31st, going on till November the 12th. And then you have either your options in Essaouira or Atlas Mountains, another 3 or 4 days, depending on, or you can come back to Casablanca and fly out from there. This is a small group. We are taking a minimum of only 10. We will run if there's a minimum of 10, and we're only taking 14 people on this. And if you need some more information, it's all on the website at EYHOtours.com. So please do visit us. And I just very quickly wanted to go into our terms and conditions, because this is something that is uppermost in your minds. So what if you book and then something happens and you need to cancel, or whatever. So basically, I've researched far and wide. I've looked at what industry standards are. I've looked and I've wondered about how to make sure that it's fairest for both you, me, and my suppliers, because this is a risk pie, as some of you who joined me for the first information session might remember. We are talking about a risk pie that has been divided up in a different way because of the pandemic. Travelers or my clients are not willing to take on more risk, or the same level of risk that they took on, say, a year ago, a couple of years ago. And at the same time, my suppliers are not willing to, they're also looking to protect themselves. They've had a very hard time. And here I am in the middle. I'm kind of just keeping an eye on both sides. So I worked very hard to make sure that these are the best cancellation and rebooking options out there right now. I'm very proud that I'm offering this, and it's because of the long-standing relationship that I have with the suppliers, that they've agreed to this. And it's we give you a full refund 2 months before tour start date. If you decide, no, we don't want to go, it's still too crazy for us, then 60 days before, just write in and you get all your money back. If you need to cancel or do anything between 60 to 30 days, you can rebook. And you can also transfer this amount to a friend or a family member if you feel that it's something that you not comfortable about doing ever. Then you can always transfer, and you have the option of going on any of E.Y.H.O tours until 2022, the end of 2022. If you cancel between up to a month before, then you get most of your money back, which is it's 40%. At least you get 40% of your money back, and then less if there's been any internal flight or train bookings, then and then an admin fee. So unfortunately, we canceled about a month before, then we cannot give you any refunds. We have already paid our suppliers, and at that time it would be impossible to do anything. Well, the proviso is that unless say something happens and you, God forbid, you have if you come up with a proof of a positive COVID test, then the rebook option applies. So trust me, this is like the gold clad cancellation and rebooking policy out there. And I'm happy to be able to offer it to you. If we cancel, if there's any chance that we cancel, excuse me, then TICO regulations, Travel Industry Council of Ontario regulations, specify that I would have to make a full refund. So we would probably make the call, 2 weeks before, 2 months before, whether this tour will run or not, and you will know. And at this point, I would say, do not look at booking flights outside of that 2-month period, because we don't know at that point. If we cancel, it could come up until the 60 days. We do require that travel insurance be, you carry travel insurance at this time, both health and cancellation, just for your protection. And I'm happy to talk to you about options for this. All major travel insurance companies have COVID provisos, they have COVID covers. It's not terribly expensive, but you do get up to about $100,000 of coverage, in case there is any problem, you need to get flown out. So a lot of insurance companies are offering that. So you might want to look into this. And we do require that you're fully vaccinated. So you have full COVID vaccination in addition to your, normal vaccination. So that, in a nutshell, is the terms and conditions. And we can go into questions now, and or open it up, and people can unmute themselves. All right. Will you be accompanying this tour? Yes, Janice, I will be. I will be on this tour. You bet I will. I will not give up on a chance to go to Morocco. I can tell you that. And I think Shikesh has probably been answering questions, so we're looking pretty good. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn the spotlight off.